Would you take your seats, please? Especially my Ken over there. Over on the table here, Michael and Suzanne, thank you. I have some gifts for you. If you'd like them, take them on your way out. And our speaker today, surprisingly enough, is Michael Wood Lewis. He tells us that he's been pulling neighbors together since his Indiana childhood spent organizing ball games. Decades later, he and his wife Valerie founded an award-winning Front Porch Forum, which hosts a network of online local forums and in every town in Vermont. Previously, he had led a trade association of New England utilities. He also guided a consortium of U.S. municipal leaders developing environmental technologies. He's earned a Master's of Engineering from the University of Urban-Champaign, as well as an MBA. Michael, Valerie, and their kids are deeply ingrained in the Five Sisters neighborhood, which you'll have to tell me what the Five Sisters neighborhood is, in Burlington. Would you please welcome Michael Wood Lewis.
Hello, everybody. Should I use the microphone? Is that helpful? Okay. So it's the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I have to acknowledge my alma mater. And the Five Sisters neighborhood, does anyone know that neighborhood in Burlington? Oh, yeah. So there are many streets in the neighborhood, but 5 of them have women's first names. Caroline, Catherine, Charlotte, Margaret, Marion. And when we started our online service, we started just in our neighborhood. And I asked my neighbors, because we only lived there for a year at the time, what do you call the neighborhood? And everybody I asked gave a different answer. Oh, it's, the neighborhood next to Christ the King, or it's up the hill from Pine Street, or it's, whatever. And I looked around, I noticed the 5 female names. Well, actually, I only noticed 4 at first. And so in my draft, I called the online thing we were creating for just the neighborhood. I said, let's call it the 4 Daughters Neighborhood Online Space or something. And then a neighbor pointed out there were 5. And then I thought sisters sounded better. So we called it the Five Sisters Neighborhood Forum. And then a month later, this was back in 2000, a long time ago, 25 years ago, when the Burlington Free Press was still, kind of the paper of record. And within a few weeks, they published an article about a restaurant on the corner, and they said, on the corner of the well-known Five Sisters neighborhood. And I was like, okay, it's official. And we've been the Five Sisters commonly ever since. Well, I'm so glad to be here today. What a beautiful spot you all have here. Can I just say, in a place, at a time with a lot of dysfunction, it's so great to see a community that can build something like this space and the great dome over your pool. One of my kids, his buddy, was a lifeguard here, so I used to come up here a lot when he was in middle school and drop him off. And anyways, what a beautiful spot, and I'm so glad that St. Albans has that. And when our kids were little, 20 plus years ago, we'd come up here for the Maple Festival, and I remember pony rides, and it seems like St. Albans is in a lot better shape now. I have no way of measuring that, but it seems like a lot of things are on the upswing here, and I'm really glad to see that. So again, my name is Michael Wood Lewis from Front Porch Forum. I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you to St. Albans, OLLI, to John, and the whole crew here for the invitation. And I'm here today to talk about building resilience in Vermont communities. And I know some folks can see that, and for others in the back it may be hard to see, but I'll try to reiterate whatever's on the screen. So how do you do that? There are some things standing in the way of building community resilience. And I'm going to have to warn you that my first few slides are going to be a downer. But stick with me, there's some good news here. So there's some strong trends going on. The 3 bullets here on the screen: a decline and loss of local institutions, a poverty of social capital, and a nationwide loneliness epidemic. And those things are adding up to stand in the way of building strong, resilient local communities. So I'm going to talk about each one of those briefly. Anyone here heard of the book Bowling Alone? It came out 25 years ago. A well-known Harvard professor, Robert Putnam, who served in several presidential administrations, wrote this real tome. It is thick, and it's full of charts like the one on the right. And what you see there is, starting in the 1930s or so, it's decades on the x-axis, and it's participation on the y-axis. And this one happens to be bowling leagues. And the top curve is for men, and the bottom curve is for women. So participation in bowling leagues started going up in the 30s, 40s. It peaked in the mid-60s for men, in the mid-70s for women, and then it's been going down, 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 down ever since. Now, that's not true for bowling as a whole. It's true for bowling leagues. It's true for people coming together to do things together. This book, and that's where he got the title for the book, but the book is full of hundreds of other local institutions that have followed the same curve. And this guy's an academic, so there's graph after graph after graph that shows the same thing for the PTO or PTA, the same thing for, we were talking about the Rotary Club with John earlier, Elks, Moose, Oddfellows, all those kind of civic organizations, church attendance, voter turnout, kids things like 4-H, Scouts, Little League, all following that same curve of participation peaking in the 60s, 70s, and then in decline. So the second point, social capital. So maybe some folks have heard of that. It's not a super common term, but we all know what financial capital is, right? That's money in your pocket, that's money in your checking account. So if you have a calamity in your life, say you have a small kitchen fire, if you have financial capital, that can solve the problem, right? You can order out for a while, you can maybe get a hotel room for a few nights, you can hire contractors to come in and fix that problem. If you're rich instead in social capital, that's the value of your social connections, your networks, your friends, your family, the people you know in your life. That same kitchen fire happens to the person who's got a nice fat social capital account, and the casseroles start showing up, right? And the person says, hey, why don't you come stay in my guest room for a couple weeks? And somebody else, maybe at one of these local institutions, at your Rotary Club, at your church or whatever, says, hey, we're going to organize a work party, and we're going to come in and do some demo, and then I know a guy who can get a deal on, a new oven, what have you. So what's happening in this country, and this book documents it, and many other researchers, is social capital follows that same curve, right? We used to be richer in social capital. We used to know more people. We used to be more indebted to each other. We lived more as neighbors. And then finally, the loneliness epidemic. I'll talk more about that in a moment, but that's made headlines in the last few years. Here are a couple more depressing, I warned you, charts. This is from the New York Times this year. The one on the left says, time spent at home skyrocketed when the pandemic arrived in 2020. We would expect that. But what was not expected was we're still spending more time at home in the years after the peak of the pandemic. The graph on the right, time socializing with others, cratered in 2020 when the pandemic hit. But again, same thing, we haven't recovered the time spent socializing with others. So we're spending, as a society, more time at home, less time socializing with people in our communities. So why does this matter? Well, the Surgeon General, a few years ago, came out with a declaration that we have a loneliness epidemic in this country and that it's a public health crisis. And there are many medical studies now that have come together to produce a chart like this that says lacking social connection is as dangerous as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. I find that to be astounding. That's what the red line up top is odds of premature mortality, that big red bar. That's if you're lacking social connection, if you have a low social capital account. The next bar is for smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The next one's drinking 6 alcoholic drinks a day, etc. It's dangerous stuff to be too alone. I heard that back there. You're lucky my wife's not here. She's a classroom school teacher. Boom, she'll be right on you. So another study, this one by Pew Research Center, found that only 34% of Americans say that most people can be trusted. So about a third of Americans think most people can be trusted. Not too long ago, that was 46%. So we're becoming less trustful of each other. And the studies point to things like big tech, like Facebook, television, economic inequality, et cetera, is contributing to that, as well as the social isolation. So, in this environment of low trust, of declining social capital, of declining local institutions, clubs, and whatnot, we become vulnerable, right? So, how many people have gotten an email that sounds too good to be true from somebody you don't know, right? That's somebody trying to capitalize, running scams, trying to capitalize on this environment where people are more fearful and don't have as many connections. Big tech, Facebook, Amazon, Google, they're taking advantage of us in a lot of ways. And I should probably whisper that because I'm sure they're listening. Politics, and I'm not going to get into politics, whatever flavor people are interested in, except to say there are a lot of people who are being very dishonest and pumping out false information to take advantage of this environment where people don't know who to trust or if they should trust anybody, where they're feeling isolated and alone. In those moments, you're vulnerable. So this situation decays local resilience that's needed when communities face hard times. And I don't have to tell anybody here, but we're in an era of hard times, right? We talked about the pandemic, the floods, the last few years, the drought. I mean, I know it's raining now, thank goodness, but the political divisiveness, there's opioid epidemic. I mean, there are crises that have been around long enough now that we hardly talk about them, but they're still harming a lot of people. And the solutions to those are found when communities can come together, and it's hard to come together. So that's the hard stuff. Now, onward. Front Porch Forum, the work that I do with my colleagues, with Susanna, who's here today, is designed to push back on this trend. And there's evidence that it's working. Not a cure-all by any means, but a step in the right direction. So let me ask, does anyone here use Front Porch Forum? Show of hands. Great, okay, a half to 2/3. So Front Porch Forum is an online service where neighbors can talk with each other. That's the short version of it. You can find it at frontporchforum.com. You can go onto the mobile app store and install it on your phone, or you can sign up for an email, various ways I'll talk more about. But Front Porch Forum has 240,000 active members in Vermont. It's a massive number. The state only has 270,000 existing households. So more people use Front Porch Forum than use Facebook, than subscribe to any other media in our state. And as I mentioned, there's evidence that it's working. So there was an independent survey a couple years ago that went out to those 240,000 people. And Vermonters came back and said 97% of them find their forum valuable for their community. It's very heartening to us, motivating for me and my colleagues. 85% frequently turn to FPF for local news, and 80% feel that people treat each other humanely on Front Porch Forum. And if you can read the fine print, the same people said 20% think that people treat each other humanely on Facebook. So it's a different environment. This is a slide I'm probably most proud of. 89% of those 240,000 people take action multiple times per year in response to what they read on their forum. 84% talk with neighbors, 56% attend a local event due to what they're seeing on their forum. That's what we're all about. We're all about increasing community involvement, civic engagement, getting out there in your community. And so these numbers really speak to that. Further, the Vermont Secretary of State this year released a study called the Vermont Civic Health Index that showed that Vermont is ahead of the curve in many measures on this idea of civic engagement, of community involvement when compared to other states. And she credited Front Porch Forum as one of the reasons for that. I'll mention these because I know that type's pretty small for the back of the room. Registering to vote. 75% of Vermonters register to vote. The national average is 69%. So we're ahead on that one. The next one is working with neighbors for the community. The national average is 18% of people report that they work with neighbors for the good of the community. Vermonters nearly double that, 32%. That's terrific. And Vermonters rank number 2 among all states in attending public meetings. Select board, school board, et cetera. So we had a huge compliment paid to Vermont and to our work with Front Porch Forum this year when Judy Woodruff, the national news anchor, came and did a story about how Vermonters use Front Porch Forum and this trend towards civic engagement. It aired on PBS NewsHour a couple months ago. I want to show a couple of minutes of it now. I'm hoping it will work.
Large social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok have billions of users across the globe, and the decisions those companies make about privacy, content moderation, and misinformation can impact people's social lives and mental health. Judy Woodruff reports on how a different kind of social network, one grown locally, might hold lessons for another way forward IRL, or in real life. It's part of her ongoing series, America at a Crossroads.
On a recent Tuesday evening in the chapel of St. Michael's College in Colchester, Vermont, the Freedom and Unity Chorus, a nod to the state's motto, is rehearsing for its upcoming concert at a nearby home hospice care. The chorus is led by Maria Rinaldi, who works at St. Michael's but lives 20 minutes away in the small town of Jericho. To build the chorus, she went online, recruiting nearly every member through Vermont's most popular social media network, Front Porch Forum.
I would ask people in my course who lived in different towns like Burlington to advertise on their Front Porch Forum, or Essex or Colchester or whatnot. And so that's really how we started to build a larger chorus.
Rick Pizer and Betsy Evans both joined the chorus after seeing posts on their local forums.
It's a community bulletin board. I mean, people sell everything from chickens to tires, you know, but it's more than selling things.
If you need something, or you even want to talk about something, there's discussions there. I mean, I see baby items, sports gear.
Somebody wants to talk about an old church pew, someone's doing political organizing.
25 years ago, after moving to Burlington and struggling to connect with his neighbors, Michael Wood Lewis started a listserv that would become Front Porch Forum. He says he became inspired by Robert Putnam's book, Bowling Alone. His copy still sits on his bookshelf, to create something that helps neighbors build community through mundane interactions.
When neighbors have some trust, some track record of working with each other, of giving, borrowing, trading, then when harder things come along, be it a house fire, a flood, even a contentious school budget debate, people have a level of trust. You know, I don't agree with John over there, but I know he's a good guy because he helped me clean up my gutters last week.
It's another approach to the growing problem of isolation. Each day, people submit postings online, and each day, a new edition of posts arrives to subscribers' inboxes. To join, you must use your real name and live in the specific area defined by each of the more than 250 forums across the state. There's no endless scrolling, no like button, and no comment section. If you want to respond to a post, it won't show up until the next edition. There's also no algorithm customizing users' experience. Everyone in town sees the same thing.
Unlike big tech social media, which is trying to pull you in and hold you in for 24/7, we really just want you for 5 or 10 minutes a day. And please, put the phone down and go outside and talk to your neighbors.
That's great. Thank you for that reception. So I felt a little foolish, but I haven't owned a TV for like 25 years, so I didn't know who Judy Woodruff was. And she walked into our little office, and people all around were kind of freaking out because in some circles she's quite a celebrity, but she was lovely. Let's see here. So how does Front Porch Forum work? This shows 4 different panels on a smartphone. You can access Front Porch Forum through a mobile phone, through a tablet like an iPad, or through a computer, desktop, laptop computer. This example shows it on a mobile screen, but there are 4 primary features. The forum, which is what most people are familiar with, and which is what was just talked about by Judy Woodruff. But there's also local community calendars, local business directories, and a search function. This shows examples of those for St. Albans City. Every municipality in the state has one of these set up now and has lots of people participating. And so there's a St. Albans City, but of course there's also one for St. Albans Town and Swanton and Milton and all the surrounding communities. So I can just focus, if I lived here, on St. Albans City version of these, or you can step back a little bit, zoom out a little, and look at the surrounding communities. So if you're looking for an event this weekend, you could look on the community calendar just in St. Albans City, or you could pan out and look in a wider area. If you're looking for a plumber, you might look in the directory, and you might look at local or regional, or maybe you have an antique grandfather clock you're trying to get fixed. Maybe you need to look at the whole state to find somebody for that. Hey, there's our state. Those are counties and city boundaries. As I said, each one of those has their own dedicated forum, calendar, directory, and the search function. And they're all networked together. But the way Front Porch Forum works, our social model, if you will, is we emphasize neighbor connection and local information sharing. That leads to people being better informed and getting more involved, and that leads to stronger communities. That leads to more resilient towns and neighborhoods. 7 Days newspaper did a cover story on Front Porch Forum last year, and as part of it, they did a series of vignettes on postings that they read, and they went and called the person and followed up and did a little story. So here's I just love this photo. A story about an elementary school principal in Starksboro, Eudora, and every winter, it turns out, she would post to her Starksboro forum asking for donations of sleds and mittens and hats and whatnot for recess. She said, pretty much everybody shows up with 2 mittens, but not everyone has 2 mittens after a few days. If we could have some spares, that would be great. And one of the responses I enjoyed the most was, as I bumped into Eudora later at somewhere else, she said, yeah, we would have community members who hadn't been in the elementary school in decades, even though their kids had gone there, and they come in and they're so glad to make a contribution, drop something off, but really they want to be inside that school again and kind of see what's going on. And we take them around, we show them the PE class and the new changes in the cafeteria or whatever. So it's just a great way of building community. Not sure what happened to the kid in the camo on the ground. Need to check in on him. Other stories, very touching. Front Porch Forum in Middlebury, Pam, recent widow, lost her husband. He was a big collector. She didn't know what to do with all his old stuff. She knew it would have value to somebody. Does she put it out on the curb? Does she have a yard sale? Too much. So she posted on Front Porch Forum. Several people came over, very respectfully and gratefully accepted different parts of the collection because, they were collectors, or some stuff I think went to a local restaurant and ended up on the walls, and as part of the decor. Somebody from the library came by, and now when she goes out in the community, she said she felt the spirit of her husband living on through these conversations and these connections. Sometimes the posting's a little more humorous, although perhaps not to the white goose. In this case, in Johnson on the Lamoille River, I think it was 2 winters ago, a goose was a little tardy in taking flight, and the ice started to move in, and now there's not enough runway for the goose to get up in the air. Somebody noticed when they're out walking the dog, they posted it on Front Porch Forum. A whole kerfluffle starts up about what to do. Should we help this goose? You don't need to help the goose. Should we, form a committee? Should we break up ice? And several days into this, Mother Nature took care of things, and the goose figured it out, and whatever. Something happened, the goose got out, and it was fine. But people were posting about it for quite a while, and then it was the chat at the country store. I just realized this the other day, but Maria, who leads the choir that we just heard about in the video clip, is also in this example. This was a group in Jericho that gathered after the tragic shooting of 3 Palestinian college students in Burlington a couple years ago, to say, what can we do as a community? And I found it to be a beautiful and inspiring case of people saying, that's not what we're about. How can we respond as a community? And Front Porch Forum is often a starting place, a catalyst for people to do great stuff like this. Front Porch Forum's role is tiny. It was the community organizers who were doing all this work. But without the easy way to connect with people in a trusting environment, that's really hard to do. So Front Porch Forum is a family business. My wife Valerie and I started it 25 years ago. It's a mission-driven public benefit corporation. It's the type of entity we are, which means our social mission is baked right into our legal charter. And our social mission is to help neighbors connect and build community. It's all about more resilient Vermont towns and neighborhoods. We have 30 employees. It's not a small undertaking these days to keep making payroll and keep everybody focused. Most of our staff work remotely around the state, although we do have a small office in Burlington. So how does it work? People post about everyday things. They borrow a ladder, they look for the lost dog, they recommend a roofer. And it doesn't seem like much, but across the state, that's happening thousands and thousands of times, day in, day out. And all those neighborly exchanges among Vermonters adds up. It really enhances and reinforces this idea of community that in so many other areas of our modern life is under attack. We provide this free service to every town in the state, Anyone can sign up and join. Anyone can read, post. And in addition to neighbors, we have a lot of small businesses, nonprofits, local public officials who participate as well. You can access this via our mobile app, our website, frontporchforum.com, or you can sign up for an email version, which is very popular. And again, the four main services I mentioned before: forum, calendar, business directory, and search. And here's this, the second half of the PBS NewsHour clip. Could folks hear it last time? Should I turn it up? Okay. Here we go.
Over in Essex Junction, Paul Lyons and Maggie Riley say they grow tired of online echo chambers. Lyons teaches music, plays in local bands, and he's used Front Porch Forum to find students. Riley works in construction and on a farm. She's used the forum to find furniture, truck accessories, and new hobbies. On the day we visited, they were meeting in person for the first time at a music studio near Vermont. After Maggie responded to Paul's Front Porch post seeking better conversations around political differences.
I found that social media, it's just bubbles. And so I found that it was just my own bubble talking back to me a bunch of stuff that I kind of already knew. And I was like, well, yeah, but what if other people think?
And Maggie, you saw that posting that Paul had put out there. What was your thought when you saw it?
I just thought that was like really nice and different than the way a lot of people nowadays think about politics. Similar to Paul, I've just been thinking, whichever side it's from, people are too angry at each other and not able to talk to each other.
There's a disc golf course right on the block.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Paul's post led to a 90-minute phone call. They had some disagreements and decided to keep the contents of that conversation to themselves, but they want to keep the dialogue going.
Front Porch Forum is helpful in that there's no comment section. The only way you can connect with somebody is to connect with them. It's not owned by billionaires. It's not being used to extract time, energy, and attention from people.
Front Porch Forum is free for its users, but makes money through local advertising, optional subscriptions with more access, and donations. And while vigorous discussion is encouraged, personal attacks and misinformation are prohibited.
8,000 members participate in this single neighborhood forum. They saw this.
Around 12 moderators, all real people living in Vermont, review each post before it's published to ensure it complies with the terms of use.
As long as people aren't spreading disinformation, aren't violating our rules in some other way, we welcome that content. But it's challenging. And these times that we're in, these increasingly divisive, difficult times, it's gotten harder.
What do you think about the policy or approach of some of the other social media platforms that say, well, we need to let everybody speak for themselves and let them duke it out, so to speak, that we are all about free speech in this country?
I don't buy it. It's highly irresponsible. They've created platforms with massive, massive power to change people's lives, and they're generating massive wealth for themselves and sucking a lot of that wealth out of local communities. And they need to take more responsibility.
When you're controlled by one person, what that one person does has huge consequences.
Eli Pariser has been thinking about the internet's impact on society and democracy for decades. In the early 2000s, he led the progressive site MoveOn.org in opposition to the Iraq War. And in 2011, wrote The Filter Bubble about how online algorithms customize users' experience while extracting and selling their personal information. He now co-directs New Public, a nonprofit trying to shape online models to better promote democracy and civic engagement, especially at the local level.
So in physical communities, we have private businesses, but we also have libraries and parks and these other public institutions that just do different stuff. And it's not to say that bookstores are bad, bookstores are great, but you need libraries too, because there are things that bookstores will never do because they're organized as businesses. I think in the digital world, you know, we've lived in this world as just private companies. That's 100%, you know, it's like organizing your whole society in a mall. And building these public spaces that can really serve public needs seems like it needs to complement the private entities.
Last year, New Public and the University of Texas commissioned a survey of Front Porch Forum users. It found that Front Porch Forum performed better than its much larger competitors, Facebook and Nextdoor, on key metrics like connecting users with where they live, treating people humanely, and helping users feel more informed.
I think we can do better, and I think we can do better by reinventing kind of what's the container, what's the business container that we're putting this in. Does it have to, you know, make billions and billions of dollars, or can it serve the public as well?
Back in Burlington, there's a question about whether Front Porch Forum could work beyond Vermont in more urban, more diverse, and larger settings. Harrisers working to create the digital tools to help others build their own models in communities across the country. But while Michael Wood Lewis has a couple of pilot forums in neighboring states, he doesn't plan to expand Front Porch Forum.
That's a whole other challenge that would require a whole different kind of team and resources. There are other people trying that, and I applaud that. But I think the solution that excites me is 1,000 different local solutions.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Judy Woodruff in Burlington, Vermont.
I learned I can't cut that off early. I did a different presentation and someone scolded me. It's like, they're not done. They're still hitting their end note. Yeah, so I also wanted to, I realized I neglected to thank UVM's OLLI program. I think it's a terrific program. I've had an opportunity to address multiple OLLI gatherings around the state, and also St. Albans Rec for access to this beautiful facility. And thanks to each of you for being here today. So that was PBS NewsHour. We've also in the last year plus been covered by the Boston Globe, Washington Post, etc. Le Monde, the newspaper in Paris, sent a person over to cover Front Porch Forum recently. Probably more important than the national and international media coverage, though, is what we hear back from the users. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, I forgot to use the microphone. There we go. Sorry about that. So as I just was pointing out, some media coverage, but I was saying more important than the media coverage to me, to us, is what we hear from our own members. I've never worked anywhere where literally we get thousands of thank you notes a year from people around the state because something in their life happened that was important and they shoot us an email. Oftentimes we get sent a card. Someone passed me a note here before the talk, so thank you for that. You know, here's an example in the top right, Bernadette in Randolph. I received so many tips for a walker after surgery. I love FPF. You know, that's what I'm talking about. We get that kind of feedback again and again and again. And, you know, in that case, what Bernadette is saying, in my mind, is she's been reminded that she lives in a community of good people that she can reach out to. And she's grateful that there's a medium for doing that. Lots of other, you know, beautiful things. Eric, right here in St. Albans, FPF is one of the few online spaces where neighbors can actually connect, share real local information, and build trust without all the noise, spin, and distractions of other platforms. So I'll just summarize by saying, you know, what we've talked about here today. Local resilience is needed in these difficult times, but towns face real challenges in building that resilience. Programs like Front Porch Forum help Vermonters build social capital. I'd argue that OLLI does that too, and other programs where people gather in person. And more of us must become better informed and more engaged locally. That's our pathway to stronger local communities and more prosperity. So I encourage you all, it's our recipe for social capital and community resilience, to sign up for your local Front Porch Forum, if you're not already, and then build a daily habit of reading what your neighbors say. Like I say, it typically takes 5 or 10 minutes a day. And then respond. If someone asks for, where's a good place to get knitting needles locally or whatever, and tell them. And it's easy to do online. It's a pretty simple interface. And then add your own voice. I love the postings when someone says, where's the best place to view a sunset this time of year? Ideas start popping all over the place. I encourage you to go onto our site and search and browse. Lots of, thousands and thousands of past entries are easily accessible. And then please help spread the word to other Vermonters. In many communities, nearly every house is signed up. In other places, it might only be a third of the houses or 2/3. So the more people participate, the more useful it is for everyone. And finally, it's all about showing up. And you folks are all here today, and that's a great example. So many people don't get out of the house anymore, and young or old, their job is online, and they're just home all day. We need to be out and about and interacting with real humans more. So I'll leave it there for any questions. Yes?
It's a comment, not a question. Maria Rinaldi, Maria Sealy, was my student for a couple of years at Winooski High School. Marvelous person.
That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. So the choir director, Maria, was a student at Winooski High School years ago of one of us today. Thanks for sharing that. Yes, right behind? No, you. Yep.
Data. So you were fortunate to have that data and the reports by this organization. Are you gathering data regularly? How often and in what way are you gathering this data from your users?
Yeah, so the question is, do we gather data from our users to inform our work? So yes and no. So I have to be careful with that because when you talk about online platforms and data, oftentimes big tech is very invasive, right? They vacuum up, they know when you blink, literally in some cases. And we don't do anything like that. Nothing like that. We just ask for your name, your address, your email address, and then we leave you alone. We're not monitoring anything. That said, when people come to our website, we can see which pages are most popular. We monitor how many people download our mobile app. We do these occasional, or participate in occasional surveys. But so we definitely, my background's engineering, so I love me a good spreadsheet. I like to make decisions based on real data. And we have a privacy policy that we take very seriously. And we don't want to violate anyone's privacy. Thank you. Yes?
How does your funding work? Do you get any government grants? Is it all private solicitations?
Thank you. So a question about our funding. So Front Porch Forum is a for-profit business. And so our business model is akin to 7 Days newspaper. We sell advertising to local businesses, and that's the bulk of our revenue. Our primary expense is payroll. I mentioned we have 30 employees. We don't have a ton of expense beyond payroll. And we also, so we have paid ads. We have something called paid access. Access to Front Porch Forum is free, like that's the 95% case. But about 5% will pay a little extra for a little more access, $10 a month, $20 a month. So that's our second revenue stream. And then our third revenue stream are donations from members. And perhaps some of you have donated. I know one person did today because I got handed an envelope. Thank you. It's a little weird because we're a for-profit and there's no tax benefit to people who donate, but our service is free. So it's kind of a weird model. We're very grateful for the donations. We didn't start out that way, but I literally started getting checks in the mail from people, and I pick up the phone and call them and say, you know, why are you sending me a check? And I said, well, I sold my house without a realtor. I saved $8,000 or whatever. I was like, well, can you do better than 20 bucks? I mean, come on. That didn't go over so well, but anyway. Other questions? I see a hand here somewhere. Yes?
I didn't know about the calendar. I get an email, and I thought that was just the forum.
Thank you.
Calendar on there?
Yeah, so there's a question about our calendar. So for the majority of Vermonters who use Front Porch Forum, their experience is getting an email forum once a day or so. And that's terrific. And that's FPF 101. That's the simplest, straightforward, and that's where much of the value is. If you go onto our website or onto our mobile app, you can access these additional features like the community calendar, like the business directory, like the search function. So go to frontporchforum.com or go to the mobile app store and download our app. And one last thing, there are links to the calendar in the email forum. So if you just, where it says event or calendar, you can click on that, it'll take you right there. Yes?
How can you sign up for other towns? So I'm a member of the Fairfax one, and sometimes at the bottom, maybe there's a calendar listing, and I'll click on it, and maybe I go to Jericho, and I can read those listings, but other times I can't when I go to another town. And I didn't ever sign up for a different town, so I just wondered about that.
Sure. So the question is about accessing additional towns. So our model is everybody can sign up for the forum in the town where they live. And if you work in an adjacent town, you could sign up for that one too. Or if you have a deer camp or a lake camp, you could sign up for that one too, you know, those kind of things. But we learned early on that there are some people, like 10% of the people, want to sign up for like 50 towns. And then some of them, and this is probably not your case, want to start speaking up about, I don't live in Virgins, but I have an opinion about, you know, this thing the city council is debating. And so our model is you can participate in the town where you live. You can look into the adjoining surrounding towns. And there are links at the bottom of the email forum to do that, but they show up kind of with a little bit of randomness depending on what's been posted. And so if you want to just do it regularly, you can just go onto the website and step through it there, or the mobile app. It's interesting, the nature of the internet is try to make everything open, and our model is a little different where we're saying, well, if you live in St. Albans City, you can participate in this. But if you live in, you know, Jay Peak, then you don't, you know, you can participate in the one in Jay. But, you know, if you don't live in St. Albans City, like, this is for the people who live here. Usually that's well accepted. Occasionally we hear from people who are not very happy with that. Do I see another hand here somewhere?
One last question for...
While you're thinking about that, I'll point out the artwork here. On the left, we had a Vermont artist, Christine Tyler Hill, who's really amazing. What's the fancy word when you hire an artist? Commissioned, thank you. I want to sound sophisticated. We commissioned her to do a piece on Front Porch Forum, and she's an ardent user of our service, and I said, just let that be your inspiration. And so every little thing, if you can't see it well from where you are, take a good look later, but there's a fella chasing a chicken, there's a person walking a dog, there's somebody helping harvest kale. These are all things that she read on her forum. On the top right, there's a raccoon eating a pear. There was a woman in South Hero, who came on her forum and did a scathing takedown of her neighbors, saying, "My husband and I just got back from a long weekend away, so looking forward to harvesting our 2 pear trees. They were laden with hundreds and hundreds of pears. We've been waiting months for this moment. We came back, there was not a single pear left, not even a drop. Whoever did this is a terrible human, and I thought I lived in a good community," and on and on and on. About 6 people posted in response. It was the raccoons. To her credit, she came back and said, "Oh dear, I am so sorry. Please accept my apologies. And if you see some fat raccoons, tell me where they live, because I'm going to go give them a piece of my mind." Wood stacking, there's an emu running down the road there. That was Charlotte or Heinsberg, I can't remember, but somebody's emus got out. So yeah, so many examples. Any other? Oh, I do often get a question of what's next for Front Porch Forum. I'll just share. We've gotten requests before to have kind of an obituary feature, as many local newspapers are contracting or disappearing altogether, and that's an important function in a community. So we just did a very light version of that. When you submit a post to Front Porch Forum, you select a posting category. Is it for sale? Is it making a recommendation? Is it a lost and found? So we created one called In Memoriam, and just about a month ago, and we've seen several dozen beautiful memorial postings to neighbors and family members that people want to share with their communities. We're always investing in the mobile app. That's important because so many people, use the phone so much these days. But also we're, with the graying of Vermont, that's trend is happening on our platform too. We want to be really accessible to people. In addition to in their 60s, 70s, 80s, we want to be accessible to people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and that's usually on the mobile app. We're working more with community newspapers to try to help them reach an audience. Same with nonprofits, small businesses. Oh, and Susanna, my colleague here, started a series of lunch and learn webinars for people who work with organizations in Vermont to learn how to use Front Porch Forum better for their church, for their Rotary Club, for their small business, for their select board, whatever their role is. So if you're interested in that, talk to Susanna or check out our website. I'll leave you with one last one here. This is a lost cat in St. Albans town. And then apparently the cat responded, "Hello," or no. Oh no, sorry, that was the owner. Sometimes people write in as their pet. Well, could be the pet, I don't actually know. But the cat was found, so we get a lot of lost and found pets. Well, I'll wrap up there. I just want to say thanks to everybody for coming out, and I really appreciate this opportunity.